Hello survivors and welcome to First Aid Spray, a Resident Evil podcast by fans for fans. This is episode 4 of the show, and in this edition the subject at hand is the long-awaited Resident Evil 2 2019 reimagining, which is now out worldwide. My name is Psyniac, you can just call me Psy, and joining me on the panel this week, he got a call last week to stay away, it's Cereal Box 64, Jordan Sugru.
Hello folks.
He came to find his brother Chris, it's Fire Button Steve Valance.
Hi!
And finally, the death-dodging special agent who spent the last week face down in a sewer for some reason, it's Adam Russell Reeves.
I was just having a sleep.
For a week. This episode of the podcast is being recorded live in the First Aid Spray Discord server, which you can join now to hear unedited versions of the podcast and contribute to the conversation in the text chat, as well as talk to us and other Resident Evil fans about the series. It's also a good place to put yourself forward for file readings if you'd like to appear in the show and ask questions for our Bitesize Discussion segment. It's been a little more active this week with the new game being out. It's been really cool to see people discussing that at length as well as various other things as well. You can find a link to this server in the description of this podcast or on our social media accounts. We're on Twitter as @FASprayPod, Instagram is @FASprayPod, and Facebook is facebook.com/FASprayPod. You can find the podcast on various different avenues, iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher. If you have any recommendations on other places to put the show, please do let us know. And if you can leave us a review on any of these formats, in particular iTunes, it would help us greatly. We're also now on YouTube, so please do subscribe to that channel. Link is in the description for that as well. And our entire back catalogue is now up, which you can listen to. New episodes will probably be a little more delayed on YouTube because that takes a little bit longer exporting and uploading and stuff. But the plan is everything will be on there as well moving forward. Right, moving on with the first segment of the podcast, which is of course the news.
Okay, so our first bit of news then, isn't it? I would suggest taking this with a pinch of salt, but as well as the motion picture reboot, there is allegedly a Resident Evil Netflix show in development. Now, do we have any particular thoughts on this other than, I hope it's not the bucket of sand, like, directing?
Callback, I like it.
Yeah, this is a weird one because it's a Deadline report that literally reads as, I've learned this, I've heard this. Netflix is making a global original show. The production company is Constantin Film, which made the movie franchise up until now. And plan is it's going to be in-universe, potentially retellings of the stories that we've had in the games, or maybe side stories, lots of Easter eggs and stuff. And I find it quite interesting because we've talked about the movies and the reboot of the movies quite a bit over the course of the show so far, and we did talk about the possibility of it. Wouldn't it be better if it was a series and that kind of thing? I don't necessarily believe that it's going to be both, but I mean that's quite a lot going on.
See, I hear in-universe, and I'm just constantly in the back of my head, which universe are we in exactly?
That was my worry when they said in-universe. I was like, well, it's the film production guys, right? Is it in film universe? Because I don't need any more of that.
Yeah,
I didn't need what they already did, to be honest.
Hard agree, very hard agree.
The Deadline report, I'll quote it for you, says, "No one is commenting, but I hear the plan is for the series to expand the Resident Evil universe and deepen the exciting mythology. I hear the series will keep the basic premise, which also served as a setup for the movie franchise, just barely. It's beyond that. It doesn't really say the inner workings of Umbrella and the beginnings of the T-Virus. Again, hearsay. Who knows for sure?
Pinch of salt, everybody. Pinch of salt.
Yeah.
There's lots of kind of Netflix projects that seem to float about. Some have better sources than others. Some seem more reliable and inevitable than others. But I mean, obviously, we know Resident Evil is an extremely expansive series as far as media goes. So I could kind of believe this could happen, or at least they shoot a pilot to give it a go.
Perhaps.
But I mean, they could really kind of experiment with it. They don't just have to go for something, like the movies did, where it's all action. Even the CG ones, they could even kind of shift towards sort of those first couple seasons of Walking Dead or something like that. Just keep it more character based than necessarily all about the action. but who knows?
Okay.
Well, the last point I will say it's quite interesting is that if this is real, and I'm not treating it as it is, and if it is real, then that's great, whatever. But it's possible because a lot of places are doing the sort of wannabe MCU, let's build a universe. So it's very possible that, let's reboot the films and also have a show and it all ties together, that sort of thing. I mean, Walking Dead is what you just mentioned made me think of it exactly because it's been a show for so long and now they're making sort of like spin-off movies and stuff. So I suppose it's possible.
They had a spin-off TV show for that as well, didn't they?
That's true, yeah.
I think that regardless of how it turns out, just simply the way that Resident Evil plays and the way we play it is such an inherently bad idea for like a TV show or a movie, in my opinion, because it's very much, in my eyes, a very solo thing, and you can't really convey that. Like, if you just had a TV show of someone running around a police station on their own, finding things and shooting people, like shooting zombies every now and then, it would be very dull.
Yeah, it's true.
The joy of the video games is the interactivity. I would never want to just watch a series that played out like a video game because it just doesn't work, in my opinion.
Yeah,
you'd have a lot of monologues. You'd have a lot of inner monologues if it was just one character running around.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it would only work if the main character was Barry Burton, because I would watch him monologue forever.
Okay, so our next bit of news then is that Resident Evil 2 2019 is going to get some free DLC, the Ghost Survivors, which is apparently involving, I want to say, a USS member, the mayor's daughter, and Robert Kendo. Alongside this, you also get 1998 poly models of Claire and Leon. I don't know if they're going to do what they did with the other costumes in-game, where you have like your various stages. Even with the classic outfits, they get like their stages of progression, like getting wounds or taking the jacket off. But either way, it looks pretty cool.
I don't see why not on that front. And also, having recently played through both scenarios with the classic costumes that come with the game, there's some treatment there with Sherry and Ada as well. So it'll be interesting to see if other characters get classic models potentially replaced in, even if it's just those two. That would be like the most that I would expect. But it's cool, some free costumes, and I really didn't expect Ghost Survivors to be free when they announced it just before the game launched. So that's really, really cool. There is some talk, and I don't know the validity of this. I think it's because this was announced at sort of a Japanese press conference before the game's release, and like various different places have different translations. But there are places that are reporting that this is going to be volume 1 with these 3 characters, and there could be potentially 2 more volumes with, I guess, 3 more characters each. But the basic premise is the what-if scenario. There will be randomized scenarios, an enemy unique to the game mode, and a shop where players purchase items with points that they earn in-game. So
that definitely could explain why this pack is free, that they're just giving it a go, trying it out. And they want to kind of get it into people's hands before they kind of move on to the next volumes. But I love the sound of it. I think it's great.
Yeah,
I'm more excited about this than probably the actual main game, to be honest, because with the main game, it branched out slightly differently, but it was something that I was used to and I kind of knew the story beats. This is super exciting for me. It's going to be like a new, fresh kind of take on it. I hope it's done well. I think it's going to be more action-y, I expect, although I don't know. It could be different for each guy. The USS guy is probably going to be more of an action run, I would expect.
Yeah.
See, I was wondering if it's going to be like the banned footage from RE7, where they literally were, each one was a different episodic that's very different. Because Mayor's daughter, the actual shots they've shown are all inside, what's his face, the orphanage. So I don't see that being a good action environment. There's only like maybe 2-3 rooms, really, and like corridors. Whereas Kendo, he runs a gun shop and he's right next to the street. I can see that being a massive survival battleground. And then the USS guy, maybe it's a more narrative-based fourth survivor kind of deal. We're being hunted by Birkin.
I wondered if the
theory.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I said that's just all theory, though.
Yeah, I was, honestly, with the Kendo one, I was thinking it might be more in the style of a Last of Us type thing with his daughter. Maybe a bit more pulling on the heartstrings. You have to maybe escort her around and try and find, like, a cure or whatever. That's what he's trying to do. I thought it might run in that direction.
Well, that'd be sweet.
Could well. I mean, I kind of would put money on sort of his wife still being alive at that point, because leading into the story.
Yeah, it's not very clear. Like, obviously, this is just what if scenarios. So, in terms of canon or timeline, whatever, it doesn't really matter. But it's not very clear whether the Kendo thing takes place after his appearance in the game or before. So there's stuff to speculate on there. And quite honestly, also surprising is that we won't really have to speculate that long because it's literally coming in 2 weeks, which is pretty cool. So just about the sort of time that people are going to be sort of, I don't want to say getting burnout as such, but you know what I mean. And then there's going to be this new mode. And yeah, I expect it to be a bit more action orientated in general, but I think each one will be slightly different.
I think it's a solid reading from Capcom as far as the game. They know most of the people that are going to be playing are familiar with Resident Evil 2. As evidence with you guys, you've beat it several times. You know these games like the back of your hand. So it coming out like 3 weeks after launch makes perfect sense because people will still want to kind of play that game for the next month or so, and it kind of jumps in perfect timing. And obviously for people like myself who take a little bit longer on certain runs, it's still exciting because it's got, a couple of weeks later, you've got something new to look forward to.
Hey, you'd be proud of those 88 saves, man, because that was impressive to see. Right? Just getting through it.
We're gonna get into those saves.
All right, so our last bit of news, it's fairly straightforward. Resident Evil 2 2019 has been met with unanimous praise and high scores across the board and has at current time shipped 3 million copies. That's pretty phenomenal.
That's pretty great, especially for a horror game. It's so weird to see this little thing that... And of course, Resident Evil 2 has been a big game for, since its release, and it was big at the time. But years since then, and I've always held it in revelry, and I've come to know it as my favourite game. Seeing it everywhere, seeing it before every single YouTube video I watch, and seeing it being talked about constantly is so weird. It's like when they made, and speak what you like about the quality of it, it's like when they made that recent Ghostbusters film and seeing the Ghostbusters logo everywhere, having grown up as the kid that likes Ghostbusters too much. It's so surreal to see everyone talking about it, and it's so great as well that it's done so well. I think Capcom have, and we're going to talk about this at length, but I think they are fully aware, even before it came out, that what they had on their hands here, and I bet they're feeling pretty chuffed with themselves.
It's something that you weren't going to imagine sort of seeing come out again. Like, to actually have this remake in your hands now, when it was something that had been sort of like speculated and dreamed of for years and years, and even when they made the announcement, it still wasn't quite there. So yeah, I can imagine it's a really big deal for people who, as I say, love those games, played those games so many different times. And obviously for myself, it's like going back, and I still get a lot of nostalgia. It's like, stepping into the RPD and such. It feels weird to actually see it talked about, an actual Resident Evil 2, because we haven't had a remake of such, since the early 2000s. It's crazy.
And say a game we've wanted since 2002, maybe, roughly, give or take. And they have stuck the landing so very well. I mean, they were aiming for more, 9s out of 10s over anything else, weren't they? That's like I think there's a couple of documents going on about it. And yeah, I'm really impressed with the fact they've managed to do exactly what they set out to do, and they kept it quiet. They weren't like bragging from the rooftops, whereas like Resi 6, I'm pretty sure we saw loads of stuff before that ever came to be. I mean, since E3...
We were told that it was going to be everything every single different Resi fan wanted. We've put everything in there.
I mean, up until E3, it was nothing but silence. And then, obviously, okay, I'll give you in the last week or two before launch, they were like pumping a new trailer out and everything. I mean, there was that really cute live-action trailer as well. But otherwise they kept it very quiet, and it still came out as a fantastic game. Yeah,
and I've had people actually message me and say they're thinking about playing it and asking me sort of, do I need to play this beforehand and that kind of thing. So that's always cool. And again, we'll talk about it more, but like there's a meme, like there's something in this game has become a meme that's probably driven it really forward. So that's really handy as well. And to see it actually sort of like, it's gone toe-to-toe with Kingdom Hearts 3 also a game that people have been waiting for a long time. They both came out within the same 4 days of each other. So it's been a crazy week in video games in general. But yeah.
I mean, you tell someone a few years ago that those 2 games are going to release in the same week, they'd laugh you out of the room.
It's true. It's true.
Before we move on to the main topics, with regards to sales, I don't know what Capcom are like with regards to sales. Do they have certain expectations? Obviously, 3 million's really good. I think that beats the first week sales for 7, which obviously Capcom were very happy with. So I don't know if they have expectations. I know Square Enix, they have quite high expectations, but I don't know what Capcom are like with their games.
Yeah, I would think that they probably had a better idea of what they were shooting for with this than 7. If I remember correctly, when 7 came out, it didn't do quite as well as the predicted sort of number. But at the same time, Capcom seemed to have this attitude of, well, that's okay. We were taking a risk by changing so much about it and moving back to this sort of more subdued horror experience. But without having the clout of being a remake and riding on the success of 7 and stuff like that, they probably had a better idea of what they were looking at. I would think they are pretty happy with how it's gone in the last week that it's been out. So, I hopefully so, because these kinds of things obviously impact the future. Right, well, that being said, we may as well move right on to the main discussion of this episode, which is, of course, the game itself from top to bottom. Resident Evil 2 2019, aka Remake 2.
And now, reading the file Record of Events from Resident Evil 2 2019, Michael Burgertime Early, who you can follow on Instagram at PaintedTableReady.
September 25th. We are turning the station into an emergency shelter due to the massive sudden outbreak. All police personnel have been instructed to make the safety of the citizens their top priority as we try to accommodate as many of them as possible. September 25th. Addendum. One of the refugees attacked us in the middle of the night, resulting in the death of 1 officer and injuring 3 others. The person in question was quickly restrained. We believe this was simply a case of someone snapping under the intense stress. September 26th. A mob attacked the station today, resulting in a number of casualties. A few survivors were able to make it safely behind the emergency shutters, but surrounded as we are, it'll be hard for any of us to escape this place. We're not sure we can fix any of our comm equipment, so we remain cut off from the outside world. September 27th. There was another clash on the west side of the station around 1 p.m. 12 people died. There's only a handful of survivors left. Everything is falling to disarray in here. David Ford.
So the game is finally here. It's kind of been the crux of the podcast in a way. Since we've been leading up to the release, it's come up in every single episode in some format, and undoubtedly we will be talking about it for many episodes moving forward. But this is the big one. This is the Remake 2 review. So we'll start at the very beginning with everyone's kind of first playthrough. What was your sort of ritual? We talked before about which character you're going to start with. Did you stick with that and that kind of thing? Jordan, how was your first playthrough? Did you stick with Leon? And
Yeah, stuck with Leon throughout. So it was weird because right back on episode 1 of the podcast, I mentioned that I played Resident Evil 2. I just wasn't very good at it. So I only got so far into the game, but I had seen enough that when I played the remake, it was just waves of nostalgia. Fantastic to see the game that, has all of these famous locations that and it's so different now. But that's besides the point for now, at least. Playing the game, I definitely went through different sort of periods of learning. I started the game very cautious. I'll say it was a pleasant surprise to have the first screen be much more straightforward than in the original. In the original, you can die in seconds. It's really no joke. Here, it gives you a little bit of free rein to sort of maneuver through to get yourself to the RPD. But I went through different stages of understanding the game, and I thought it was a successful case of design that it allowed me to learn that over the period that I played Leon's campaign. Because at first, you're freaking out. You're just pumping bullets into the zombies, and you're learning about their characteristics, how they act. No pools of blood on the floor, so you don't know that they're actually dead or not. You also don't really know how many bullets it's going to take to actually keep them down. And so at the start of the playthrough, I was wasting a lot, like just so much ammo lost in hallways, which when you look back on, you can do much better. But obviously, that was part of the design of the game because it's trying to literally scare the ammo out of your hands. it's trying to make sure you have your wits about you. So I went through different periods. By the time I got to the sewer, I was suddenly playing with a much more sort of economical stance to ammunition and the weapons, and just generally not being as sort of foolhardy when I go into rooms and get scared. So over the period, I definitely felt like I was connecting with Leon in that sense. He's the rookie cop, like being thrown into this world, and I was learning about it too. By the end of the game, I mean it's not Resident Evil 4 sort of like action like full blown, but it's got a fantastic explosive conclusion when you're fighting the final boss. And by that point, I felt like I'd really kind of grown into the game, and it makes me think like, all right, I want to do another run through where I do way better than I did before. As mentioned, my save file is definitely going to be the worst out of everybody's. Like, just put that out there. It's Leon campaign is 12 hours, just under 12 hours runtime with 88 saves. This is what happens when they give you free saves. So in the end, I don't really look back on that record as all that prestigious. But the game design worked for me. It meant that I could play the game and grow with it. And now I want to go back and do the other runs and get better at it. So I think it's a fantastic game. And it's got really good pacing.
So, Steve, you had a particularly interesting experience, as our followers will know, because we tweeted about the fact that you were waiting until midnight of the launch, and then you were going to jump right in and stream it with your buddy Moist Owlet that you've been playing all the games with on YouTube. And how did that go?
Well, you must have seen some of the tweets during the night, hadn't you?
I did. I woke up to see all like my favourite one. I've got to call it out. My favourite one is the photo of you two outside, terrified to go back in and play the game.
Yeah. So we started at midnight. We didn't finish until about 10:30, and I have to be honest. By the end of it, my nerves have been completely shot to pieces by just the sheer tension of the whole affair. We put a public vote up before we started of who we were going to play. Obviously, me and James, we wanted to personally play Claire, but the vote decided that rookie cop it was, so we went as Leon. And from start to finish, there was just this ever increasing feel of dread as I'm going through something familiar, but it's alien to me. And as Sarah, as Jordan said, the zombies, you don't know if they're going to stay dead or not. And by the end, I think we'd finally twigged, like we'd either seen a tip as we died or whatnot. I mean, you poke it with a knife, it'll reactivate. But up until then, running out of bullets, we were constantly passing the pad between each other, between the episodes of when we died. And that backseat tension was just as bad as when you were holding the pad. It didn't matter if you were controlling it or not. And, ooh, dear. Plus, he was lording over me that he played the one-shot demo and knew all of what seems like about 5% of the game in the end.
So yeah, the best part about all of this is that you're releasing them all as episodes, like you're alluding to there, so people can actually start to watch this first-time playthrough for you, which is really cool to see someone experience the game for the first time.
I'm going to say episode 5 went out yesterday, and I believe Leon A will finish next Friday. Because I try to dice it all.
Yeah, that's fair.
It's weird thinking back on it now, but I think the standout moment for me is it's when that tweet was taken with the photo. It's we had just met the tyrant, and we were. I think we were just constantly hearing him walking around. We thought, right, we need to take a break. So we go outside. It's pitch darkness. I'm just having, I'm doing a cigarette thing, and then someone with really heavy boots 2 streets away, we hear him, and me and James don't want to go anywhere but sit down in a dark corner because the game is resonating outside into the real world, and Mr. X is here to kill us. You know, it was genuinely haunting, and I haven't had that kind of resonance in a long while.
Adam, how was your first experience?
You know what? My first playthrough went real smooth, actually. I played Leon to start with, and I just really took my time with it. I didn't want to... I think I ended around 12 hours, around 30 seconds, 50 less or so left. So I feel bad about that. I could have saved a lot more. But yeah, I mean, I really just took it all in. I enjoyed it. I felt like I kind of wish the streets at the beginning were a little more fleshed out rather than being just a trail. There wasn't even really any mechanics to learn. It would have been nice if there was like some of the, you know, hold a button to move something while there's a bunch of zombies coming at you to really up that kind of early tension. Like, oh shit, I have to move this mailbox or whatever, and there's like a ton of people coming at me. But other than that, it was really good. I kind of didn't really kill much in my first playthrough. I just made sure to kill the lickers because I knew that once Mr. X was coming around, that lickers and him would be a complete nightmare. One, you have to run, and the other, you have to kind of sneak.
Yeah.
So that wasn't going to happen. So I tried to avoid as many zombies as possible because, and this honestly happens to me in every single Resident Evil game, no joke, I hoard all the good ammo. And I always say, oh, I've got all these Magnum bullets. I'm saving it to the next big thing. And then, like, I accidentally get to the next big thing without realizing it. I don't have the Magnum bullets because I'm keeping them in the case. So I just get through it. And then I'm like, well, the next boss is in trouble because I got And then I end the game and I have, like, 60 Magnum bullets or whatever. I'm just like, oh, okay. So, but overall, I thought it was great. When I first played it through, because it is a pretty tense game, it's pretty dark, and you with the zombies, and obviously I wasn't really trying to kill too many. I was just trying to get through. You kind of never really know, and I think it's a real benefit to the new camera angle. Well, I say new, but new for the game. That zombies can surprise you a little more if they're lurking behind a door or something, because you don't have that fixed camera angle. You can't always see particularly well. So there was definitely a lot of tension for me. The most tension I had and the most problem I had was probably the dogs over the lickers, over Mr. X. Mr. X wasn't too bad. He was pretty easy to telegraph and avoid, I felt. I don't know if that was just me being lucky, but the dogs caused me a complete nightmare. Like when I was down in the parking garage with Leon, I was literally sweating. I was like, oh god, no. And I didn't click on just like shooting them while they were in the cages, because I was like, if I shoot it, they're gonna all burst out right now. And I should have just killed them in the cages because it made then the lickers and the dogs like a nightmare.
My first experience was the fact. Well, I started with Claire, like I said I would. I was thinking about Leon. I wanted to start with Claire, so I said I'll be the odd one out and I'll do that. And there was kind of a thing where I was sort of in two minds about it originally, because before it was announced, which was like the week of release, that there was such thing as the second run mode. I was thinking, okay, if we're looking at the original Resident Evil 2, one of these characters is going to have more emphasis on Birkin, one of these characters is going to have more emphasis on Tyrant, and I had this horrible feeling that if I started with Claire, I would be dealing with Tyrant on my first run, and I didn't think that was a good idea. Turns out
funnily enough, it's opposite.
It is, yeah. I mean, he's in every single one, of course, but Leon gets more of it. So when they announced the second run mode was actually in, I was pretty happy about that. And it was good to start out with the character that I associate so well with, and I play Claire A on Resident Evil 2 all the time. So it was kind of like stepping into familiar territory, but also upside down. I waited until the evening that day to play it because I wanted my wife to get home because she wanted to watch some of it, and so I spent the day keeping myself busy until I could boot it up. So I got around to the time where Tyrant starts showing up before I put it down for the first night, and then I went to bed that night and I could hardly sleep because I was just thinking about him coming down the corridor, not particularly in a fearful way, but just like trying to think, how am I going to deal with this, what trying to think about what do I do next, where am I going, what am I looking for. So that was a pretty cool experience, and then waking up the next morning and getting right back to it. Over the course of the week, done all of them, but my first run is very much like Jordan was saying, was much more cautious. It's the longest time you're going to have, because from there, part of what I love about Resident Evil is not just that first run of wasting ammo and wasting time and not knowing where everything is. It's the subsequent stuff where you get better and you figure it out, and it becomes a whole other experience. But yeah, it was brilliant that first run, just to experience all those familiar things in new ways. Just a thoroughly enjoyable experience the first time and every time since. So I guess the best place to start in terms of dissecting each individual part would be the visual and audio stuff, starting with atmosphere and that kind of thing. So feel free to start, anyone. What did you think about the aesthetic of the game?
I really loved the look of it. I'm not really one to play too many modern titles. I feel like I'm a little out of touch with the video game world these days, with real adult life and stuff. So I haven't played many titles when they were new. I sort of get round to them a few years later, a little cheaper, and I just kind of run through them. I'm not much of a multiplayer guy or anything, so it's fine for me. So this is like my first interaction with a brand new release game. I wasn't going to miss out on it. And honestly, I was kind of blown away by the graphics, but more than the graphics, like the kind of textures and like when you're walking through the first part of the police department when you first get in, like the laying water on the floor and stuff like that. Like a lot of modern gamers probably take it for granted or something, but it really felt amazing to me. It's super cool. I was worried at the point that it would all be dark and we would be using the flashlight the whole time as like you're going to get scared gimmick because it's dark. I was happy to find that wasn't really there was plenty of the game that wasn't, in super dark. It was used pretty effectively. Overall, I was a huge fan. I was amazed at the amount of different assets, if that makes sense. There isn't like a ton of repeat assets everywhere. Not that's super obvious through all the stages of the game, which was nice.
No, that's very true. It's not something that I thought about. There is some cool stuff in there that some people consider it Easter egg. I just think it's reusing stuff from 7, which is totally fine. It fits. One part of the game that I in particular love, graphically speaking, is what I always call the liquor corridor, but I guess it isn't anymore. That first kind of hallway that you go down once you start exploring the RPD. Just the use of lighting in there, and like you say, the water and stuff to reflect, and it looks incredible. Every time I go down there, I was like, this just looks so good. In terms of the layout of the RPD and the design of the RPD, I think they pulled it off brilliantly. I'm amazed at how well it all comes together. Like, the place makes even more sense. It makes so much more sense than it did before, but it looks so right and so real as well.
It feels like perfect timing.
It really looks good. And I guess we didn't say this at the top of the episode, so I'm going to throw it in there now. Spoiler warning. Big spoiler warning.
Yeah, true.
So I loved how in the B run through, like that first corridor came back for the classic liquor. That was awesome.
Yes, is there one in there or two in there? I don't know. I'm always pegging it,
There's
so
one.
I don't know. Okay, it's
just one start of it. It literally runs past the window like in the original, and then it's up on the ceiling in the same space. It does. You don't get a cool little cutscene, but
I'm always too busy running away from Tyrant at that point to really.
The visuals are fantastic in this game. In fact, they're probably one of the sort of the top aspects of this game. In your mind, you've probably been thinking about this for years. How would a Resident Evil 2 remake look? And I'm just so glad, really, that they held off this long, because seeing the visuals now, seeing the sort of the absolute fidelity of those visuals now, I couldn't imagine it coming out at any other time prior to this. In fact, to even imagine that maybe a Resident Evil 2 remake could be made, say, last gen, it would be kind of a bit of a nightmare, to be honest, because I just think that the photorealism that they're hitting now complements the original visuals so well, which were stark, they were grim. That was kind of the reason that they went with pre-rendered visuals, and I think that, you know, in a lot of aspects, they've really kind of kept that atmosphere. Even though it's a different atmosphere, they go for a different tone in a lot of the same locations. It just comes off so great. I think all around, just visuals really complement Raccoon City in pieces. Obviously, the main attraction is RPD. When you go around RPD, it's where most people are most familiar with, and seeing some of those rooms, as you mentioned, the liquor room, it's got a completely different take to it, and all the details in every single room. I can remember every single room very distinctly because of how they dress them and, you know, decorate them, and obviously that was one of the strengths of the original, that each screen was pre-rendered, so it had, you know, sort of minimal sort of asset reuse, and you get the same thing here. The cutscenes are fantastic. I think, like, they've all kind of come across pretty well. Like, they're not trying to be you know, too photorealistic. You know, there's still a bit more sort of stylization to it. But yeah, overall the presentation, superb. I love the lighting, and the color saturation. There's certain rooms that they're more oversaturated, which actually kind of gave me that vibe of the original game. Because even though the original game was probably sort of a bit brighter, you know, a lot of those rooms in the RPD actually still have lights on. There was a decent amount of color to it, which I think obviously over the previous generation, the trend had been that games had a sort of a more muted, more realistic color palette. But even when you're in a very dark room, you still get kind of quite rich blues as a sort of like the night skies coming in. And yeah, I think it complements it just superbly.
I agree with you, Jordan. There just seems to be, and again, it might be my naivety on modern age games, but there just seems to be so much attention to detail. Like, the in the RPD, in like the dilapidated areas, there's so much stuff just laying around, crumbled, pictures, tons and tons of stuff. It just really, really gives you such a great atmosphere.
Indeed. Steve, any thoughts on presentation?
Being very, very, how do I put this? The environmental storytelling in this game is like leaps and bounds above any other Resident Evil game. Like, the opening bit in the car, you know, the petrol station, there's so many assets there, you can even tell just exactly what's gone on before Leon stepped. Well, all right, maybe after Leon stepped through the door, but you see the dude on the floor, he's bleeding, there's stuff everywhere. Obviously the sheriff's trying to arrest the man, stuff like that. And then there's one room that really speaks out to me at the minute, and it's the East office, right? Because there's chains on one side and it's barricaded on the other. There's only a corpse and a zombie in there, and it's like you can kind of see what's gone on. These two cops kind of thought, we can hold out here, we'll barricade up the doors, and like stuff like that all around the RPD. There's like little stories if you just look, and like you can dissect, and that is what I really, really appreciate about this game. Like, it's not going to like groundbreakingly expose, oh right, so Umbrella did in fact invent cheese or something stupid like that, but there will be just bits and pieces of little stories of how these people got into this state. I mean, that stuff I love. Like the locker room, for example, there's an entire wall put through and there's steam blasting through. You know something's gone off in there. Someone got smashed into a locker. And that, all those kind of little details in this like really, really high def 60 FPS stuff. I mean, 60 FPS on console is not apparently an easy thing to do these days. So that is just phenomenal to me. A bit fanboy gushy, I apologize, but I think you're right.
No, that's a really good point about storytelling. And also there's like some little jokes here and there. I know, especially when you get to the lab, there's a part where you get to, I think it's like the cafeteria area. And in there's quite a few zombies, one of which is eating another zombie. And you hear the automated voice say, it's something like, please try our nutritious snacks in the cafeteria.
Yeah, that was great.
And it's like, that's perfect timing. There's plenty of storytelling in all of the rooms. And you really get that kind of, that sense that you're coming in the aftermath. You're seeing a lot of these things. You're just petrified about what's left, because you know it's after you.
They call back to the lab with the passive-aggressive emails all over the place.
Yeah.
Like each other in that place.
Yeah, that was some serious, like, people in Raccoon City are dick, for sure. Like, so, no one's polite in their note. But that's fine, I guess. Speaking of the lab, that was really cool to see. Like, the areas that were super clean, because it was so different. Obviously, it's such a different aesthetic. That was really enjoyable too. I found myself in the police station actually when running through it. Again, I'm not, overly familiar with Resident Evil in terms of like I haven't played it a million times, the original one. I've played it a few times. I do love it. But as I was running through it, because of the tension and the zombies that were everywhere to start with, I didn't pay too much attention to the rooms I was in terms of like layout and aesthetic. I was concentrating on getting through. But as I kind of got more used to traversing the station and more comfortable and not being so scared, as it were, it was very cool to be like, oh, this is the room that Marvin was in originally in the first one. And I just noticed the details that show like, here's the window that looks through into the other area. And that was really cool.
Yeah, definitely. One of those that I love that's really kind of subtle is just after playable Ada segment, when you take control of Leon, you go down a set of steps. And if you turn around, you realise that's the room that they have a conversation in the original game where she runs off and he yells, Ada, wait. And you wouldn't even realise unless you turn around and you see the kind of sort of like the machinery and all that. And so, oh, and then you step down into the sewers. I thought the new sewers were brilliant. I really like that. I'm not as big of a fan on the new lab. I've got mixed feelings about that. I think the sort of the tail end of the game sort of, I don't want to say lost me or anything like extreme like that, but it did make me go, oh, a little bit, because
I actually have a quick question about that due to I haven't played the original in a long time, and I'm not as familiar with it as you guys. The lab area felt real small to me. I didn't mind, but it seemed very, very small. Now, back in the original one, is the lab area really like as small as that?
The lab, playable part of the RE2 lab is quite small. It got expanded in further games like Outbreak to feel like a much bigger facility. But yeah, it's honestly about the same size, maybe even smaller, but that's more down to the difference in the games and the gameplay and that kind of thing. Obviously, the greenhouse is quite a big new area. But it was okay. And I think it was just because there's lots of changes right at the end there that I kind of made me go, the lack of a marshalling yard was kind of a shame. The changes to the Ivy as well is kind of a shame, that sort of thing. But overall, the changes that they've made and the stuff that they've cut out for whatever reason, I don't necessarily miss them. I'd like to see spiders come back. It'd be cool to see the moth, I guess, but...
Praise them off.
Praise them off.
I did have notes about that. Yeah, I was a little. That was the one kind of thing that kind of disappointed me. I would have liked to have seen a bit more of those kinds of odd enemies, even if it was just like a one-off encounter or like a nod to it. Just because at the end of the day, it was great fun, but there's very limited enemy types in this game. You've got zombies. You've got zombies with ferns all over them, and you've got Mr. X, and you've got lickers and dogs. And other than the bosses, I think that's pretty much it.
I mean,
would
they
have
did
been-
quite well, I think, changing the G mutant into a more regular enemy. That's good at
Oh,
least.
the G mutant as well. That was
Which
good. That
is-
was definitely pretty limited in the amount of times that you face that though.
Yeah, but it was kind
Which
of
was fine.
cool.
Again, you didn't need an overkill on that enemy.
It was kind of cool in that sneaky way that where they were like, we've added no new enemies, but what they have done is vastly kind of changed some.
What
of
we've
them.
done is taken a bunch
Taken
away.
a boss and turned it into one. Yeah, well, they have taken, and also the other minor one. While I'm just putting silly gripes out there, is would have been nice to see the bow gun, and I think Capcom are quite good at listening to people. I think the second run thing, and this is probably a discussion for another day, has been added quite late into development. And I think it's very possible that they will listen to people, and maybe somewhere in Ghost Survivors we will see bowguns, spiders, stuff like that, if they can make it work. But that's neither here nor there. Audio is a big thing for this game, definitely. We were talking sort of before we started going with the podcast about the binaural audio and the effectiveness of sort of the sound design, the lack of music somewhat. Mr. X is the big one in terms of the audio design, definitely.
We obviously did the stream, so we were doing headsets the entire time, and I have to be honest, it was oppressive. Whenever music was playing, you felt relief, even if it was not like the save room theme, because you felt like, it's some semblance of normality. Like now, if I'm doing these hardcore difficulty runs, I have to play with the classic soundtrack on, or I am going to constantly brick my pants. So it's the sound of like heavy footsteps on corners, or just like the slight raspy. There was times where I was just that terrified. I just tried barking back as if barking at the screen was going to do something. Like that did nothing. Run. It's the actual. Like, everything feels damp and oppressive, and just generally like the slithering sounds of like the lickers as they're crawling around, and like the weird predator chicks they do when they're like they don't hear you but they're listening for you, like. That weird stuff. It's just, it gets under your skin in that really awesome but horrible way, if that makes any sense.
Absolutely. One of the standouts for me in that is the female zombie shrieks are just horrible. They're just so shrill and awful. I love it. It's just, the sound design is pretty incredible. One that's been pointed out to me by a few people is they love narrowly escaping a licker and hearing it scream in frustration from the other room as you get away.
It's genuinely scarier than like any, obviously the alien, the xenomorph alien in most games is like got a very distinctive, like creepy sound. Licker outclasses it for me now. I used to not rate lickers at all. They've gone up my estimations on just how damn right scary they are now.
Yeah, it's a perfectly piercing scream, especially when you're hearing that when you're trying to run away and you're getting to the door and you just feel like, I'm losing my back. I'm having that clawed right off me. I know it.
Absolutely.
But I mean, it's a good point to say that sound is oppressive because, I played the whole game listening to it on headphones and I had the binaural, what do they call it? The binaural sound? Binaural audio. And it's fantastic. And obviously it is an aspect of the gameplay. I would actually be pushed to say that it's almost essential to play the game at its fullest. You need headphones. It's great that there is an aspect to the game like that because obviously there's not much music and that is deliberate. And so you're constantly listening out for everything else. And the sounds that they've went with in this game, they definitely elevate the aggression of these enemies. I mean, everybody remembers the original sort of typical zombies in Resident Evil 2, all kind of were just sort of low groans, and now that it reminds me of DayZ actually from a couple years ago. That that really wretched screaming, and just like in DayZ, you don't necessarily know where it is to begin with, so you're freaking out, you're scrambling, trying to see where they are, and obviously the headphones help with that. As far as like effects and sound design, it all sounds really good. Hearing the sort of like the dull thudding footsteps of the tyrant as you're going around the RPD is genuinely terrifying. The first time that I met Mr. X, I actually had to turn off the game for a while and think about it. Do I really want to do this? And especially if you push for time or you haven't completed certain puzzles, that sounds really terrifying because you're constantly listening out to it as you move around the police department, and you have to be really careful on making any kind of sounds. I love any game that takes precedent with the impact of sound. Obviously, a lot of stealth games do this, and certain stealth games get more success out of it than others. And I think Resident Evil 2 is up there. It really makes it impactful. Lickers suddenly have a new strategy when you have to be incredibly quiet, to the point that you're moving at a glacial pace. And I just had that whenever I was going into those rooms. And I think sound direction's fantastic in that respect as far as sound effects. Music obviously is a bit different. It really depends on what you're after with these games.
Yeah, I think that's one of the big complaints that comes up with a lot of people, is that the soundtrack does leave a little bit to be desired. And Sharky has pointed out in the podcast chat that he's got some standouts. Quite rightfully, he said Hunk's theme is really good. That's really catchy when you're playing the fourth survivor mode. And the Mr. X one is particularly good. Whilst we were playing it, that kind of, when he comes around the corner and it makes that noise, that practically became a meme in our house for several days, where me and my wife were just doing it at each other to annoy each other. And now, when we play the board game, which will be a subject we talk about more on the podcast in the future, I'm absolutely certain when we spawn the tyrant, it's going to be met with I think that theme is going to become iconic. I really do think it's... And him now was becoming a meme, which I referred to earlier, which is really good for him because he's kind of an underrated villain from Resident Evil. Has definitely accelerated that as well. But overall, it's really interesting, the soundtrack, because I've listened to the actual soundtrack on YouTube, and it's really, really good. It's really good. Most of it's just not in the game. It's very strange. There's lots of pieces there that are interpretations of classic themes and that kind of thing. But most of it's not in the game. So if you are interested, do go seek the soundtrack out, because there's a lot of cool stuff there that I'm sure I've never heard being played.
They've got to be split over the different scenarios or something, surely.
I don't know. It's possible. Or maybe I just missed it because I was in and out of certain rooms so quick, possibly. I don't know. Mostly I'm playing it with the classic score because it feels really good and it feels right.
Can we just talk about that? Because that holds up really damn well.
I was amazed how well it fits.
Yeah, I thought it was going to be like...
really goofy.
A little bit of like odd shoehorned fan service. But they did, like... When I played with the original soundtrack, it felt like they built the game that way.
Yeah. Did the sewers, and I'm going to call the sewers like the combo marshalling yard now, because it feels like they've got both the tracks, and well done, Capcom. Hats off to you. Not Mr. X's hat, though, because it'll hurt me.
On that note, did you notice the amount of hats in the police station? There's like fedoras everywhere.
Don't.
Yeah, good point, yeah.
And now, reading the file, copy of emails to Umbrella HQ from Resident Evil 2 2019, Carla, aka Stell, who you can follow at twitch.tv/Responage.
Director Owens, there are alarms going off all over Nest. I don't know what's going on, but I can hear gunfire, and I can't reach my section chief. We're trapped. Please, send help ASAP. Director Owens, the situation here is dire. Nest has been contaminated with the virus. It's unbelievable. The failsafe system didn't activate at all. Is this the work of outsiders? I can't imagine who else it could be. But why? Mary and Kim are dead. I can't stop coughing. Why won't you answer me? Director Owens, it was you.
So, I suppose we should talk about the gameplay next. That is the core feature. That is the important thing here. This is the marriage, as we talked about before, between the classic horror stylings of Resident Evil with the more modernized, kind of more comfortable over-the-shoulder thing that Resident Evil 4 is pioneered, maybe a stronger word, but popularise, and this game finally manages to find a way to make both work. You feel kind of in control because it's familiar, comfortable controls where you have a grip on what you're doing, but because of the way the game is based around smaller corridors, aggressive enemies that kind of weave towards you and stuff, it amps up that horror aspect. And I think personally, and I admittedly I am prone to a little bit of hyperbole, I think this game is going to be hugely important moving forward for the series. And even looking back 10 years from now, this will be the moment where we go, Capcom figured it out here. They've figured out how to make survival horror work again in the modern age. I was amazed at how wonderfully the game plays in every direction, be it trepidatious horror and also comfortable aiming and firing mechanics and that kind of thing. But not too comfortable, because of course if you're moving around or firing too much, you're screwing yourself over by not having a precise aim. I was blown away by the gameplay.
See, tinfoil hat is going on a bit here, but I feel very much like they might have done a cheeky wink and a nod to us classic fans, because you have to plant your feet to get a decent critical hit with these pistols now. You have to literally, play it like it's tank controls or you're going to miss. And or you're not going to get a decent shot off. And I love little cheeky things like that. And that, well, you know, I'm kind of a bit at a loss, guys. You take over.
Steve's just having like a fan meltdown.
I'm gushing.
I completely agree, though. I know exactly what you're getting at, and it feels right.
Yeah, it felt really great to play, actually. And I feel like they've really hit the nail on the head when it comes to your ability to move around. You feel pretty free, and it feels very fluid, but at the same time, you know, your walk and your run is a little slower than you would like in a good way. And I know a lot of people were complaining about the running, but I mean, if you were to put yourself in the situation, you wouldn't be belting it around. It's too dangerous to run at a full pace in the situation. You would, you know, in confined areas, you can't really run at full pace anyway. I felt like it was great. It was enough to outrun Mr. X, but never like get so far ahead of him that you were like, I'm just running around.
Yeah.
And not least because you've got like things like flamethrowers and shotguns on your back. All of these extra things are going to mean that you're going to be shuffling a little bit sort of slower than you would be.
Exactly.
Got pockets full of gunpowder here. I've got to be careful.
Yeah, I mean, I think the gameplay is top notch. The shooting feels really solid. Just everything, the moving, the shooting, the damage tracking on the enemies is insane. I've never seen anything like that. Just like you can, you know, the wounds that you can inflict are so specific to where you aim. That's pretty crazy to me. Again, I don't play many modern titles, but that was like, whoa, look what I can do to these zombies.
Well, the consistency is even amazing on that, because you could shoot a zombie at the start of the game, and then just before the point of no return of the cable car, spoilers, there's a cable car, you go all the way back, and that same zombie is still there with the same wounds you've inflicted on it.
Yes.
It's an excellent persistence in this game.
Yeah.
Yes, and I really destroyed myself because I killed a few lickers by doors, and often when I went back through doors, I shit myself. I was like, oh no, I killed it.
I literally had a moment like that yesterday where I was going through the sewers, and you know the G mutants can kind of lurk underwater, and you see them, and you're like, okay, that's
they're kind of like floaty, yeah.
Yeah, but sometimes you can't tell the difference between one lurking or one that's dead. So I literally said out loud, "You can't fool me." Fired a grenade at it, and it did nothing because it was already dead. Idiot.
The level of damage that you can do to some of these zombies is insane. I didn't actually think that you could say blow limbs off at the start of the game. That was something that I had to learn later on, which is a shame because it's a really good tactic as you're going through and you're trying to conserve ammo. But that's only because the zombies could take so many hits. But I remember there was one, it's just before I basically sort of like put out the fire at the helicopter, and you're going over to there's a save room just across from it, adjacent from it, and I was running over that. There's 2 zombies, and there was a female zombie, and like I had used so much ammo on both of them because they come bursting through the door, and I thought I'd taken them both out because I used a shotgun. And one zombie was not knocked out by it, but her face was more or less gone.
Yeah.
Like, I think the zombie had like maybe some eyes and a bit of spine sticking out and maybe a bit of brainstem. And it was horrifying. It was like the top jaw was still there. And I was like, oh, it could still bite me. And it was just coming towards me. It was horrifying, terrifying.
Yeah.
So I love the sophistication to the zombies now, because I think that is a real good sort of signature of this game's design to kind of mess with people who have played the original, time and time again, and know their strategy, know their how many hits it takes to take down each zombie. All of a sudden, some of these zombies are real tough cookies.
Yeah.
I love that aspect. I mean, as far as the controls are concerned, I think Capcom has they've taken a risk because they knew the response to Resident Evil 6 and the series in general, as far as over the shoulder camera, and that it felt a bit played out just because it was a little too formulaic. To then take a beloved game and use that kind of control scheme for a remake. It's a big risk, but it's all kind of it's turned out fantastic. I would honestly say between Resident Evil 7, Resident Evil 2, I don't think the series has been as healthy as it has been for years. Like, its future looks fantastic with the kind of gameplay that they're offering us now.
Absolutely, I absolutely agree with that. And in terms of the zombies, there was an interview, I believe it was kind of around E3 time, that said that basically the director of the game was just obsessed with getting the zombies right. And it wouldn't surprise me if the reason that this game took so long is that they spent so much time getting that right. And it's where everything falls into place. Once you get that combat down with the zombies and it feels tense and fearful, like anything could happen, then everything else potentially falls down around it. From everything from the way that they move, they can suddenly like lurch towards you, and you're still trying to put shots and then wondering when the hell it's going to go down, to when they grab you, depending on where they grab you, you can defend yourself from the front but not from the back, or if you're lucky you can shrug it off. And yeah, once they figured that out, I think they probably had a very good idea that this game was going to be gangbusters, to be honest.
There's a really nice touch if you take out a zombie when it's in a decent close range before it could actually attack you, and if you take it out with last couple shots and it kind of just falls on top of you, which if you're in the middle of an ambush, that's really scary because you have to go through the animation where you're pushing the zombie aside. And again, that's robbing you of seconds of getting away from other zombies. Yeah. I love the way that they can ambush you. If one bites you and there's another one nearby, forget about using sub-weapons. You're getting eaten. There's some excellent aspects to that.
Okay, I've had my gush. I'm okay.
You right now? Yeah, you're good?
Yeah. I've got it out of my system. But I think the thing that I appreciate most about this right now is it's taken so many mechanics from so many other Resident Evil games and they all work. Like, Remake, you've got your sub-weapons. You've got your over-the-shoulder camera from Resident Evil 4. You've got your free aim and movement from Resident Evil 6, but it's not over the top. All these different little flavors all spicing together, and yet it still feels toned down enough that you're almost a real human rather than a superhero. I think that helps the game a lot.
Yeah. I love when we talked about the sort of damage to zombies, but also the fact that, when you get grabbed and wounded, it stays there at least for a while is really cool. It's almost like, as you were saying, kind of a nod back to the old games. It's something that that Resident Evil 2 introduced to the series, was the hobbling. So, and I believe 1.5 was meant to have, sustainable wounds like that and your characters over time and that sort of thing. So it's cool that they included stuff like that. Definitely.
I feel like the progression system's a little weird, though. The gun parts and things, that can be broken when subsequent speed runs. Now, obviously, all the answers to all the things. You can upgrade your gear a little too fast, it feels, maybe, as a slight knock against the gameplay. I
guess so, yeah. Yeah, possibly.
I've yet to might have been intended. This game's been built with speedrunning.
I think that is intended. I think that I think in this day and age, there has to be a certain amount of pandering to the I want to shoot things audience. I think that was just like, here, have some good guns. You're still going to run out of ammo, but here you go, enjoy yourself.
Yeah. Right, well, let's move to the story. So obviously this is a retelling of a classic tale in the Resident Evil universe. It's mostly stuck to the same plot points, pretty much exactly. There's some different plotting in terms of locations and that. Both Claire and Leon's playthroughs do essentially take similar pathways. When it's time for Leon to go to his specific area, Claire goes to hers and that kind of thing. How do we all feel about the sort of plotting of the game and the story? Adam, why don't you start?
This might be my, as much as I liked it, it might be my most disappointing thing about the game. I felt like there wasn't much emphasis on story. Funnily enough, it felt to me like there was way more relatable interaction between Ada and Annette than anything else in the game. I would have liked to have seen more. The whole Birkin thing isn't ever really gone too far into. I would like to see, more information about that. I would like more information on the G virus. We all know these things pretty well from from the years and enjoying the lore. But really, there wasn't too much I found in game that really gave us a cohesive timeline of the things that are happening. Essentially, another thing that really upset me was Birkin pulling a gun on the soldiers. I felt that was very derivative from the original story, where it was an accident. That seems like so much better. And I feel like Birkin, obviously, he's this hyper-intelligent guy. You have to be to come up with, the things he's doing. He's got 3 soldiers pointing guns at him. Why would he pull a pistol? They're not going to kill him. Admittedly, they're going to take his research, which he doesn't want. But let's be honest, it's not something he can't deal with. So that just seemed a bit cheap to me in that sense. I got a bunch of stuff written down here about the story, so I'm just gonna run through my thoughts here. This one isn't really story related, but watching the Birkin stuff through the tapes, we spoke about it when we were talking about what we expected from the game the last time we talked about it. It would have been so good if they were short sections where you were playing as the USS soldier sneaking up, because he drops down through the grates to ambush him. Give me a bit of that. Give me a little section where I can sneak up on Birkin and then let me pull the trigger on him myself. Oh man, yeah, let me shoot him. Let me cause the problem. That would be hilarious. I think that Ben could have been used a bit more. He was pretty throwaway. He didn't really tell you anything you didn't know. Although I will say his scene is probably my favorite scene of the game. His death looked insane to me. I loved it. Just his head just popping against the wall, and his eyeball squeezed out between Mr. X's fingers. That was crazy. That was awesome. Yeah. Another story beat, I felt that the Plant 43 section was a bit of a disappointment. I wish that the plant had been a bit more involved, although I can understand kind of where they came to. It might be a bit of a weird gameplay experience to be suddenly fighting an actual plant or something, especially given the tone of the rest of the game. And I felt that in this version, Annette came across as a lot more sympathetic, maybe even a little more so than Ada. I felt like she never really came super across as a villain. Her biggest crime seemed to be that she wasn't a very good mother. But I think in real life, between 2 parents that are super scientists that are more married to their work than each other, that would be an unfortunate byproduct of that marriage, is a daughter that is basically, until it's too late, not really regarded at all. So I felt I felt like I wish that more of like a net backstory and stuff. I wish that time was afforded more into the main characters, I think. But other than that, I really enjoyed it.
I don't disagree with any of your points, really, to be fair. I did have some issues with some of the telling of the story, especially when I was sitting there thinking about new players experiencing this who haven't played the original. The characterization, I think, in general was really good, pretty much across the board. I liked the new Ben, and his redesign was pretty cool and unexpected as well. Annette, I thought they pulled off really well. I actually quite like the fact that you don't really get the full sort of what she's dealing with unless you play both runs, because on Claire's run you kind of see her as sort of almost resistant to helping Sherry because she's got so much going on, and then in Leon's run you kind of have the reason why, because she's trying to stop the G-Virus leaking any further. Ada and Leon's relationship seemed much more, expanded upon and real, which, to be fair, it would be hard to be worse. Leon and Claire's very few moments were good. There's a particular version of that sort of scene where they're at the fire escape with some flirting and that kind of thing that comes off really, really well. And I love the characterization of both of them. They got those both right. Which was great. The only one that I wasn't super keen on was Irons. I think they went really over the top with him. He kind of went from this subtle, creepy kind of guy with his secrets underground that really only comes to unwrap once you get there. Whereas in Remake, he seems to be fully aware that he's a psychopath and just kind of like wades into it. But that's just me. Steve, how did you feel about the... sorry, go on, Adam, you had a point.
Oh, sorry, but I just wanted to jump in about Irons because I didn't mention him, and I actually enjoyed him a lot. So I have a bit of a different feeling to you with that. I felt like he came across to me when you first met him in the parking garage. That I feel like his character came across that he felt like he was important to Umbrella, like he was doing, working with them or whatever. And he kind of got left behind in the resulting madness, and he's now in a place where it's super dangerous. There's zombies everywhere, and he's kind of just left to be like, okay, Irons, thanks a lot. So I think he's like a narcissistic, evil man that has been left in a position that he didn't think he would be in, and I felt like that carried through. He was just. I really liked the character.
That's fair enough. Steve, how did you feel about the characters? I know you've probably got a lot to say on this.
Oh, okay. Well, generally, I liked how everyone was a little bit, should we say, more human and less robotically hokey. But I'm gutted that Annette at no point said, "You murdered my husband," and the usual ranting and going a bit over the top about how she's trying to protect the G-Virus. That being said, though, I think the star of the show is still Marvin. I genuinely feel for that man, and he did everything he could to save us, and I feel almost morally obligated when you return to the RPD to put the guy out of his misery, because he did his best,
I agree. I did shoot him, yeah. I mean, I was trying to avoid a lot of zombies, but when it came to Marvin, I was like, oh, I'm sorry, Marvin, I gotta kill you,
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
for you, not for me.
Yeah, and what else? Well, Ada, she's. I like the idea that she's now got some kind of cover story other than "I'm looking to find my boyfriend. His name's John. He used to work at a branch." I could just recite this, sorry, but that she's got an actual cover story that's sort of cheesy but still works.
Especially considering that Leon is so naive that he totally works in that way.
Yeah, but he's going the whole rookie cop angle. He's trying to work on the case, and that's why he wants to get the G-Virus, as opposed to I'm just helping this lady because she's looking for a boyfriend.
Yeah, exactly. I agree.
Yeah, and Irons, I can see what you mean, but it's kind of like his old how could I do everything, but they've done this for they betray him. He sees this to be betrayed by Umbrella. I think the whole diatribe's in an earlier note, not verbatim, but from the RE2 one when he's ranting, and he's just more obviously deranged. Whereas before, he seems like a broken man with a corpse on his table, basically going, "Oh, F my life," kind of deal. Turns out he's actually a few crows short of what is it, rookery?
Murder of Crows, isn't it?
Yeah, that's the one. Sorry.
Ironically.
Oh yeah, sorry. There's no crows. Oh.
I suppose, to be fair, Iron's kind of character in the original Resident Evil 2, when put into context of everything, and this is me getting a bit more lore heavy, is a little bit odd because we find out an outbreak and stuff like that. And in fact, actually, I think there might even be files in Resident Evil 2 that basically tell you he's been wandering around the RPD the last few days shooting police officers in the back for fun. So he's lost it at this point. So I suppose the characterization in Remake 2 is a much more like tied together sort of thing, and that's fine. It was a little bit sort of like jarring for me, I think, and it'll be something that over time I'll be like, yeah, okay, it fits, it works.
I say I love Claire's reaction when she finds out that guy's the police chief. It's like, oh yeah, really upset parent goes to find daughter from Maniac. Oh.
Jordan, how do you feel about the story and characters?
Well, as far as like pacing was concerned, I feel like it's been sort of directed towards sort of a shorter play style. I mean, obviously, again, I took about 12 hours on my run, so those cutscenes seemed a little bit more fleeting, but I thought they were just right if you were doing a shorter run of the game. Yeah, I mean, a standout scene for me was when they get to Kendo's shop. And, you know, Leon and Ada are talking to him as he's trying to get to grips with the fact that he's lost his daughter, effectively, to the virus and stuff. There was obviously some, you know, fantastic kind of performance capture going on there. And I think it's obviously it's a world away from the kind of the cheesy, hokey beginnings of, you know, the original Resident Evil games as far as cutscenes were concerned. So it's really cool to kind of see as time progresses, those kind of story cutscenes sort of progress and mature in that respect. I loved the relationship between Leon and Ada. As you say, the cover story is much better. It makes much better sense. It also makes sense for why Leon is sort of so easily led along. Not just because Ada seems to come out of nowhere and save his life a couple times, but because she's there on, you know, an FBI case, and, you know, he is, you know, effectively lower on the pecking order and stuff. But yeah, acting overall was really good. I haven't experienced anything with Iron, so I don't know too much about that side of the story. But from my experience with the lab, yeah, all of the interactions with Annette were really good. Yeah, I think it stands on its own. Like, even if you were just watching the cutscenes, I think they stand on their own really well. But the performances are great. So it kind of sets your mind running of all other kinds of scenes that you could see that, you know, you remember from the originals being reimagined in, say, Nemesis and stuff like that.
Yeah, and like you were saying before, it's so good this has come out now in this generation, thinking about those cutscenes and how incredible they look. And cinematic is sometimes a word that gets used to mean over the top, sort of bombastic, but cinematic in a more subtle way that it feels true to itself, but also way bigger and much more 21st century appropriate. And touching on Kendo, that's one that we didn't bring up. I really love the unexpected changes there. It was so different to the original character, but he served the story so well by sort of offering that moment for Leon and Ada to push their characterizations forward and have that conversation and move onwards with the story. So yeah, the plotting is quite well done. The pacing is quite well done. There is some issues with the fact that the second run is very barely different. That's obviously a problem, and that's kind of what I was getting to earlier when I feel like it was added perhaps later in development. Claire A, Claire B, they're really very similar. It's just some enemy stuff.
I didn't realize I'm playing Claire A through at the moment, and I am a little disappointed in that, where I'm like, oh, I kind of played like a condensed version of this already when I did my second run.
If they'd have split the Birkin fights maybe a little bit like they did in the old one, make it a bit more varied, that probably would have helped a lot.
Yeah, it is. It is that, isn't it? As also because you have to fight the same boss fights for all 4 runs for a lot of them.
Unless I haven't played Claire B yet, but if Leon B is anything to go by, Claire is going to fight every single form Birkin has, and that just doesn't seem quite right.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, and why does Birkin stage 4 act more like he's less of a dog now?
He's still got 1 charge attack.
He does do the dog thing a bit, but I liked him a lot. He was a bit more bombastic.
Design.
Yeah,
it's the perfect.
All of the G designs. The 5 was excellent. I love the 5.
One last observation about the performance. I really like Leon's voice actor. I think he did a really good job of kind of characterizing Leon. Because I was then watching clips of Leon Kennedy and a lot of other things like the CG movies and 4 and that, and he sounds. He obviously it's a different character at that point. He's past the events of Resident Evil 2, but he's a lot more grizzled. Whereas here, it sounds like a kind of like perfect voice for somebody who is quite open and naive and is a rookie cop. He's first week in the force and that, and I thought he kind of like nailed that. So I think the voice acting overall was really good, but. Leon stands out to me. Obviously, I played his playthrough, so it stands out to me more.
Well, this is fair. There was I had a moment a couple of days ago where I was doing a Leon run, and he just made like a yelp of surprise or something as something, I don't know, burst into the room, whatever it was, and it sounded straight up like Leon. It's a good voice match. I don't know if the voice is the face in the same way that I think the Claire voice actor is also the face model. But either way, it's a good pick, I think, for face and voice.
I don't think it is. I think the voice is different to the face.
That wouldn't surprise me considering how sort of accurate both of them are. And whilst you guys were talking about favourite G forms, I actually booted up the game and was flipping through the models recently in the bonus section where you can look at all the character models and stuff. Super Tyrant, I didn't even realise, you zoom in on his face, it's awful. Like, he's missing most of his jaw. He's got that sort of like cut underneath his eye, just like he had before, but now it's really strikingly gross. It's really cool. Usually these sort of like bonuses in games is not something that I care that much about, but I've been really enjoying looking at just how grisly some of these models are by like really zooming in and looking at the fine details, getting a good look at the crocodile and that kind of thing.
I say the zombies, each animation's a different one as well, so you can appreciate all the models, which is nice.
That's cool.
Yeah, why I was wondering. Actually, my wife commented. She was sitting watching while I played through on the Saturday after, and she commented on like, why is like this guy's biggest issue just falling off of things all the time. she was like, every time you fight him, he seems to fall somewhere. It's like, just stay near the edge of things.
I'd say that's pretty accurate, to be fair, though.
William Birkin's blasting off again.
Sunny Barrow in the chat says, did we all like the Super Tyrant? He personally didn't like the look compared to the original. It's different. I'm not so sure about the body shape. He's a bit too it's a bit too thick for me. But
I agree. The body shape was weird because like it's almost entirely different from when he has the coat on. He seems shorter.
Yeah, he does. Yeah.
And that's why, I guess that's probably why he always wears the coat. Like, everyone's like, why is this Tyrant wearing a coat? It's because it's like one of those, like, where you can buy that underwear that, like, holds your belly in. It's like one of those coats. It just holds it. It makes him look super hench. And then when he takes it off, he's like a short, fat, bald man.
Yeah, it's true. It's what the hat's for, some extra height.
So, Star, you've got the models up right now on your screen, right?
No, I don't, unfortunately.
Well, you know that little control chip I was thinking about? I think we talked about there's a thing in the side of the Tyrant's head. It's gone on the Super Tyrant. I'm wondering if they might have retconned what the power limiter is, and it's just in between you seeing him, he's had it blown out. He kind of just disappears in a ball of flame and then reappears as like, well, here's a classic Tyrant with trousers on.
That's true, actually. Yeah, because it's visible in other cutscenes as well, isn't it? So it's odd.
So his little chip's gone. So I guess he's just gone rogue.
Yeah, I don't know.
For want of a better term.
Yeah, fair enough.
It's just a theory, but
maybe it was the stockpile of ammo that I had. But Super Tyrant was much less intimidating than typical sort of trench coat hat Mr. X stalking you through the RPD. I think as well, because at that point in the run, you're quite used to fighting, G-virus mutations. So you're used to like the big claw arms. You've just fought Birkin, so you're kind of used to that aspect, and you think, okay, here comes Mr. X, and he's got a claw arm now as well. I know, obviously, that was probably in the original as well. But I would almost be more terrified if I was on that lift with just standard Mr. X.
I
just
think
stalking me.
Yeah, I think that, I mean, the way I felt about it, and I think like the general psyche is when you get to that point, you're in a defined area and you have to beat him. So instantly in your brain, you switch into, I can kill this guy now, as opposed to this guy is unkillable.
Yeah, that's fair.
And it's a little less effective. It was an enjoyable fight. I always kind of hate video game fights when it's in an obvious box. Like, I don't mind if you're going to give me a box to fight in, give me some scenery, give me some stuff in that box. It's a bit less enjoyable when it's just like, here's a square. There's not really anything in it. Here's a monster. Kill it.
Yeah, that's where the game kind of has that a lot.
It does, yeah. It does have. This is the boss fight.
Yeah.
Especially.
Yeah, most of them felt not too bad though. Most of them had character, or like I'm literally playing right now. I just beat the first Birkin as Claire on my Claire A run through. And even though that's in a box, it still has. It's all the refinery stuff. You still move around. There's a little cat and mouse going on. So it's still more engaging. I wasn't too impressed with the Super Tyrant fight. It did look pretty cool, but at that point, I was pretty able to take care of him quite easily.
Yeah, sure.
That's a solid point about sort of like expectation towards the end of the game. When it's the last fight, you're like, okay, I'm going to be all right, because if I get through this, then I've done it. I had flashbacks of Arkham Asylum's last fight with that giant Joker.
Wow. Oh,
Yeah.
God.
It's like he was a G variant, But yeah, like, I mean, not to go off topic, but in that game, that had several boss fights which were much more intimidating throughout the game, and when you got to the last one, it was not as intimidating. And I completely see your point with regards to the Super Tyrant, that it feels like that you're like, I'm on the home stretch. And besides, at that point, like, I had a lot of ammo, like a lot.
Yeah,
it did feel very throwbacky. Like, for vintage Resi fans, if you see that 2-slot plug and you see an obvious place to put it, you think, right, I'm basically reserving space for a rocket launcher, so I'm just going to hold out for 10 seconds and then bam, But
yeah, what made me laugh about, I mean, it's it's funny with both examples on A and B of that 2-slot plug. It's like, here's the 2-slot plug, and right next to it is the place to put it. Like, oh, okay, thanks. It's pretty funny. So it's like, pick this up and put it in here.
That's a classic Resi trope, though, isn't it? I suppose. So I was quite happy to see that, because you walk in the next room and there's your super weapon.
Right.
Unless anyone's got any other final points, we'll move on to the last bit, which of course would be to talk about where we think the future is with this and how this impacts the rest of the series.
While we're talking about boss fights, does anyone have any particular favourites? I mean, mine particularly is actually Form 2 Birkin, because there's a little bit more to it than just blast it. You have to smash it with a giant crate that's conveniently there.
I like the boss fight, but I don't. It struggles with the fact that on multiple runs, it's very kind of repetitive.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm leaning towards.
I didn't have
maybe actually.
I didn't have any standout boss fights in the game. Not that they were bad, but they were all essentially a variation of Shoot Some Eyes.
Yeah.
I was a little disappointed in stage 4, just because it was just like, here's a minigun, take this to the boss, and then I just proceeded to minigun the boss, which is, I guess, is fine, but it took a lot of, like, when you get given something like that, you instantly drop a lot of fear, because you're like, oh, I got a minigun now. probably Burke in stage 1, or if it can be counted, Brian Irons when I was hiding from him in the orphanage. That felt to me like I was probably more nervous about that than I was about most of the game, because it was an unknown area for a start, and secondly, I honestly didn't know what would happen if he caught me, and I was kind of like on the edge about that. I didn't know if I wanted to see what would happen if he caught you. So I really enjoyed that. It wasn't necessarily a boss, but it was kind of like a little boss section, essentially.
Yeah, that's fair enough. Yeah, actually, and to be fair, we didn't really. I mean, this game is kind of, it's a big deal, and there's a lot to talk about, and obviously we can't touch on everything. So we did skip over some certain areas. The orphanage, I thought, was quite a cool little side part for the story, and more than that, actually, I really loved in that Claire playthrough returning to the streets afterwards and kind of hopping over the dumpster, which was very reminiscent.
That was excellent.
Going through the basketball, and the bus.
That was excellent.
I loved that. I would, and again, I'd love to see more streets, and I don't know if there's new areas coming in the DLC. I would actually be surprised if there was.
It looks like I mean, I know they released like the still like here's the character faces and stuff, but it looks like the USS guy is outside in his little bit.
Okay.
And I assume Kendo would be as well. There's no reason
that would be the assumption
to not be. So let's hope we see more. Because, yeah, right.
Maybe so.
Special Officer Kendo. He's got his junior badge, you know.
His brother's mates with all the STARS members, so
right.
It's possible, I suppose. Yeah, fair enough.
He's got a little glorified USB stick.
Yeah, that's right. That's true. He's got his own. So yeah, in terms of, I mean, we were talking before at the top of the show about the sales figures and the general sort of reaction this game has had. Yeah, I think the future, and we talked about sort of the brightness of the Resident Evil franchise. I think the future is assured to be good at the moment. I think we're on a good track, and I'm very confident that the next game, whatever it is going to be pretty good as well. They've got me now, and I'm actually fairly confident in Capcom at this point, which is nice to say for once.
I want to say that's coming from you, Si. I think that's really high praise, because you were very worried about the remake at one
That's
point,
true.
weren't you?
I was against this for a long time. I went through a long period. It's funny, I found an old tweet that I made in 2013, where Capcom tweeted, I don't know what it was, but I just responded with, and I was one of those guys. I was just like, yeah, where's Remake? But in subsequent years after that, like I've said before in this podcast, and like I've said to you guys, I didn't want it. I didn't think it could be done. I didn't think they could pull it off. And they shut me up, and I'm happy that they did. So yeah, it gets high praise from me. I'll make a full in-depth review for my YouTube channel at some point, rest assured. But yeah, the future's bright for me, and I think this is going to be a playthrough that we see, a play style, I should say, that we see a few more times definitely before it starts to get stale. There's definitely ways you can mix it up and change it and integrate it in different ways and expand upon it. Whether that's Remake 3, RE8, Revelations 3, whatever you want to put out, I think this is going to be, part of the future. This new feel.
It's a great period of time. I mean, as I mentioned earlier, it feels like this series is in very good health at the moment, and Capcom have always kind of been quite expansive with Resident Evil. Like the releases are never really that few and far between. So I could fully see that if they do want to continue to experiment with Resident Evil 7's gameplay, they could do that alongside an over-the-shoulder style still. With regards to the next remake, obviously it's already being produced, right? So they're already kind of like on that path. I think there's some really good reading of the audience at the moment. It really feels like Capcom have taken the time to listen and understand their own series. So the hope is that they take the next step with quite a sort of a measured thought, and they don't rush into anything, and they don't double down on anything. And certainly don't chase any trends, which was ultimately where sort of the point after Resident Evil 4, that was where that started to happen, where they were chasing some trends and game design choices that were happening in the industry. So they've just got to kind of like, take it cautiously and
Hopefully to
understand
set
what
some
went
trends.
right.
Sorry,
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're in that kind of period of time when people do want games that are tough and and are scary again, and they don't just have to be something that you're just blasting through in sort of a casual sense. So I think they've got that solid groundwork now, and I'm sure they'll feel much better knowing that they've got a really solid engine behind them, and they've nailed down the foundations of the gameplay that they could realistically work through over the next half decade, maybe decade, with regards to games that they could put out. I know, obviously, lots of people will be asking for remakes for Nemesis, for Code Veronica, maybe even some of the original games like 0 and 1 as well. So they've got lots to work with. Just, if I was in Capcom's shoes, I would take it slow and kind of enjoy the development and the rebirth of the series as it is right now.
I think the guys in the chat have hit the nail on the head a little bit, and this is, we talked a lot on our first episode about Resident Evil being lots of different things to lots of different people, but it is evident that certain games in the series stray way too far out, and like you were saying, chasing trends. Whether it's a whole discussion for another day. Is just calling a game Resident Evil 6, does that just make it Resident Evil? But does it have to adhere to anything in particular? Whether or not that's true, Resident Evil 2, it feels like Resident Evil in many different ways, and in the way that Resident Evil 6 tried to appeal to so many people. I feel like 2 does that too, but in much more measured ways, that it's of the now, but it has all those nods and takes kind of those experiences from the 90s. And Resident Evil feels like Resident Evil. That's true. That's what's important here, I think.
I mean, it's insane to think just a few years ago, Umbrella Corps was just released. So
it didn't happen. So last Resident Evil was Revelations 2. We understand.
it's a mad turnaround. It's a bit like Nintendo and their handling of Metroid. One year they put out something like Federation Force, which feels completely out of touch with what fans actually want, and then all of a sudden they're remaking Metroid 2, and they're going to make a Metroid Prime 4. Those kind of gear shifts. Eventually, yeah. Those gear shifts, they're completely unexpected, but they're so widely embraced because the fans know what they want ultimately. So when they actually tune into that and they get the right level of interest, they've got that solid backing, and I really hope that this game sells well. I know it's already had a fantastic week, solid week. Frankly, I hope it does at least 3 times that in at least by the end, because this is like the best that the over-the-shoulder camera Resident Evils have been for me for quite a few years. I know there's room for improvement in certain aspects. I mean, we didn't have much to say about the boss battles. That's something that they could definitely improve upon, but they've got such a good foundation right now, and it just seems so insane that only a couple of years prior to this, it felt like the over-the-shoulder had completely lost its way, and it was just being kind of trotted out by Capcom in any way that they could see financially viable. Now they've got something that is not only solid, but it's also financially viable, and it's a great future ahead for Resident Evil.
Well, go for it.
I would say, not to echo what everyone else has said, but it's literally straightforward and true, isn't it? That Resident Evil has now had 2 straight bona fide hits in a row, and up until 7, everyone was like kind of pessimistic or burnt out, and the future's bright, and everyone's now just bickering as to whether they want a Resident Evil 8 or a Code Veronica or a Resident Evil 3, and it's nice to see people are excited again, and people want new, well, maybe rehashes, but more Resident Evil stuff along the line. Me personally, I'd rather have 8. I'd rather tread some new ground and mix it up, and then maybe go back and do a remake. But I think we've said that before.
Yeah, but I think we're all in agreement that as long as the product is good, whatever it is, we'll take it. It's nice to see Resident Evil doing well. It's nice to see the community
Exactly.
in higher spirits for the most part. But let's wrap up this part because Jordan mentioned something there perfectly about this being his favourite, or rather a much better interpretation of the over the shoulder, and we'll move on to our bite-sized discussion segment. So our bite-sized discussion subject this week comes from Sharky from the Discord server, and he asks, and this is quite a big question and maybe a little bit too early for some people, but let's see what you come up with. Where does Resident Evil 2 2019 currently fall in your favourite games from the series? Oh boy, Steve, would you like to start this?
Oh, right, me on the landmine then. Oh,
off you go.
Right. I think, all right, being as trying to be as new toy syndromeless as possible, trying to be as impartial as possible. I think it's in the top 5. I actually kind of still think I'm going to play Resident Evil 2 Vanilla more, but Resident Evil 2 is in the top 5 2019. It may even be at number 2, but the sheer nostalgia for the first one is still higher. All right, and I still... All right, let's try and nutshell it. It's probably going to go...
It should be pointed out, favourite doesn't necessarily mean you think it's a better game. Nostalgia is a big part of it. So it's all down to your personal experience and preference. That's the way I see it.
Okay, well, then it's definitely in the top 5. Debatably, maybe at number 2.
Wow. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
Adam, what about you?
It's up there. I think it's probably my second favorite. Oh, no, it's probably tied for, like, this might upset people. Resident Evil 4 is my favorite still, just in terms of replayability, just because it's a bit more action orientated. I felt like this Resident Evil 2 feels like a step forward from that in terms of the look of it, but I still just like running through and killing stuff on 4. It's just, but after that, this and the first remake, I think both are ones that I'll keep coming back to. Like the first remake, I play a lot, and I think I'll play this probably at least once a year solidly. I'm really excited for the DLC. I can't wait to play as the USS soldier and kill that moth, because obviously if he's not in the game, everyone has to have a last boss, right? That's how it works. So I'm assuming the USS soldier is going to be fighting his way through like a giant moth nest.
The achievement, like crazy moth, I'm fine with
that. So, but yeah, I think it's probably in terms of feeling, atmosphere, it's probably my favorite. Closely followed by Remake. In terms of how often will I play this, 4 probably just like, because I said I just enjoy running through 4. I know that game like the back of my hand now. So, yeah.
Jordan, what about you?
I don't necessarily have like a ranking going on because the games are obviously they're so wildly different. The series is so big that you could look at all kinds of games. But I would say this: I feel like it gives me the same feeling that's on par with how I felt about Resident Evil 4 when I played through that. That it felt like an experience, and yeah, it is completely different as far as a philosophy is concerned. Like their approach to gameplay is entirely different. So it kind of feels like it's on even footing for me as far as like the best in the series, my favorite is in the series. It feels like it is on the same footing as both Resident Evil 4 and the remake, because remake it was just about the way that it would petrify you with fear. And Resident Evil 2, the remake, has that. But at the same time, it obviously has the similar gameplay to Resident Evil 4. But I feel like there is a maturity to it in comparison to Resident Evil 4. 4, you can have a of fun with. By the time you get about a third away into the game and you start building up your arsenal, you really kind of get into the flow of the action. With 2, it is still firmly in survival horror. And so, yeah, I would say that this is another sort of, watershed moment for the series for me. It really kind of feels like another title that kind of stands out. We've had a lot of games that have kind of tried to hone in on that. Obviously, Revelations is one of those in recent memory that's tried that. But I would feel like this is the game that's really kind of stood up to that caliber in recent years.
That's fair, yeah. This is why I caveated with favourite, because number one for me is always going to be, whatever you want to call it, classic, OG, original Resident Evil 2. Just
Resident Evil 2 98.
Yeah, absolutely. The original Resident Evil 2 is the game that introduced me to the series. It's the one I played the most, so I am unequivocally in love with that game. Remake 1 would probably be my number 2. I think if I was talking about best games in the series, that's probably the one for me. I think that's the purest form of Resident Evil and that kind of thing. I do think Resident Evil 2's remake is in my top 3, so I'm really happy to hear everyone else say pretty much similar things, which is interesting. I mean, I said the same thing about 7, so I'm not sure if it pushed 7 out or the original Resident Evil or what. I'd have to write them all down to figure out exactly, but if I did that, definitely top 5, pretty sure it's in my top 3. For the time being, at least. I'd be surprised if it manages to beat out the other 2 and get higher. I think it's one of the best games that's been released in the franchise for a very, very, very long time. And watershed moment is a good way of putting it, definitely. This is like we said at the beginning, this is sort of, could potentially be a big turning point. So it's good to see everyone here react so well to it, as well as people in the server and people on Twitter. And even casual fans. I've seen lots of casual fans, if you want to put it that way, say, yeah, this game has beaten out Resident Evil 4 for me, which is no easy task. So very happy about that.
So it's nice seeing a smatterings of people who haven't played Resident Evil games before rating this game really high as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Well then, nothing else remains for me but to thank our contributors. If you'd like to be part of the show, then please look into auditioning for file readings. One way to get in touch is to email us at faspraypod@gmail.com. But of course, the best course of action is to join the Discord server, where you can also ask questions for the Bitesize Discussion, discuss Resident Evil with us and other fans, and listen to the podcast live as it's being recorded. The link to the server is in the description of this podcast and also on all of our social media platforms. You can follow us on Twitter at faspraypod, on Instagram at faspraypod, and on Facebook at facebook.com/faspraypod. You can find the podcast on YouTube, Stitcher, Spotify and iTunes, and if you enjoyed the show, please do leave us an iTunes review or a review wherever you can. It helps spread the word. Our next episode is probably sooner than we anticipated. We're going to have to shuffle our schedule slightly because the Ghost Survivors comes out February 15th, so likely we'll be reconvening a little time after that to talk about that as well. Thank you to the panel. You can follow us all individually on Twitter. I'm at Psyniac_123, Steve is at Firebutton Games, Jordan is at Serialbox64, and Adam isn't on Twitter, but you can find him on Facebook at facebook.com/Mr. Lucky Paint, where he paints all kinds of board game and miniatures of all kinds. The Resident Evil 2 board game is finally on its way to the US, so you'll be seeing some Resident Evil content from him on that page as well, so go hit like. Finally, thank you all for listening, and have a good week.
Hey!
Another one in the bag. Thank you all for coming to listen. This was...
No, it was enjoyable. I always like doing it.
It's a good time.
The liquor just jumped through the damn interrogation window.
And there's our bumper outtake.